We're talking about the challenges that we face today, but also the challenges that we're expecting to face tomorrow. So really looking at the emerging future of cybersecurity, and particularly when it comes to emerging technologies. And of course, there is a lot of talk about artificial intelligence. I have a background in cybercrime investigation, in law enforcement, and also working for big tech. So I spend a lot of my time thinking about AI-powered cyber attacks, but also AI-powered cyber defense and cybersecurity. But I do a lot of work as a futurist, and when I'm looking into the future, I see that all of the different technologies that we're interested in, like AI, like the metaverse, like quantum computing, they don't develop in a vacuum, they converge, you know? They're going to merge all together, they're going to accelerate each other. When we think about things like 5G and 6G connectivity, we need that to power smart cities, to power metaverses. When we have things like blockchain and NFTs, we need those so that people can claim their virtual property in metaverses. And then when we're looking a bit further out and we're thinking about quantum computing, well, we know that's going to change everything, what happens when that merges with artificial intelligence. And so it's a really exciting time. When we're thinking about how businesses, for instance, and other organizations should prepare for the future, I think it's really difficult because the more I say, oh, well, in the future, we'll have quantum computing and we'll have AI-powered cyber defense, you know, that's all well and good to use your imagination and think about these scenarios. But I also understand that businesses, and particularly chief information officers, CEOs, chief information security officers, what they're really looking forward to knowing is, what do I need to buy now? What do I need to worry about in the next 6 months? And we have a number of different threats that we know are increasing. So something like ransomware. Ransomware has been around for many, many years. I first investigated this 10, maybe 15 years ago. But actually it's changing, it's evolving. It's gone from being about small amounts of money, targeting small businesses, to targeting critical infrastructure for millions of dollars, and also affecting national security. And we've seen what's called the double extortion threat. So, blackmailing you to get your money and then releasing your files anyway and causing a data breach. We're also more concerned, I think, about supply chain attacks and third-party attacks. Going back to ransomware, sometimes it's not the fact that you have got vulnerabilities within your own networks and systems. It's that you've bought services or you've bought cloud storage off another provider that has been under a ransomware attack. So it's recognizing that, the information security environment and the data landscape is becoming much more complex because we're outsourcing so much. But what we know from legislation and from companies' liabilities and data protection legislation is that actually it's your responsibility, it's your business's responsibility. One of the things that I think businesses and organizations of all sizes are becoming more and more aware of now is that they can be under attack from criminals who are driven to make a profit, to make money, or they could be under attack from nation states and groups that are affiliated to or possibly sponsored by nation states. And it's one of the curious things about the cyber world, really, is that it can be very difficult to tell the difference between those three types of attack until you've conducted an investigation further down the line. So the defense aspect of this is that really you're defending against all types of threats, regardless of how they motivated. But certainly what we're seeing is a blurring of that distinction. So if we think back to 2017 with the WannaCry ransomware attack, that was ostensibly an attack that was driven to make money. It appears it's allegedly associated with a nation state. And there is some suggestion that one particular nation state, which is North Korea, generates a certain amount of its GDP, its national revenue from conducting cybercrime. So whereas previously in my career in law enforcement, we would say, oh, well, we work on the profit-driven cybercrime, and the national security folks, they work on, the state-sponsored cybercrime. It's really difficult to tell the difference these days. Also seeing, I think, in the context of various conflicts around the world, and I've taken a look particularly closely at the invasion of Ukraine and the conflict there, is we've seen a kind of mass mobilization of hacktivists. So people around the world who might not necessarily be living in the Ukraine or don't necessarily live in Russia, aren't necessarily being paid by a government, but they feel motivated to engage in cyber operations because they think it's the right thing to do. So we have the volunteer IT army of Ukraine that has sourced people from all over the world to do this. It's a bit unprecedented, really, because it's not just about sharing information, it's about, in some cases, conducting denial of service attacks to bring websites down, government services down. And it raises a really interesting question. What happens when that volunteer IT army needs to be demobilized, when they need to stand down? If, however the conflict resolves itself, what happens when we need to tell these people that they can't do that anymore? And actually some new guidelines have been issued by the Red Cross and others to cover just this, that there are civilians now operating in what we might call a cyber war. If they were to do that against their own citizens, or if they were to do that in any other format, they would be cyber criminals. So how do we deal with them when actually they're doing this because they feel it's the right thing to do? They're motivated by social justice. It's perhaps a flavor of the world we're in right now, that activism includes all of those things. It includes climate activism, and I think it's perfectly possible that in the future we're going to see more climate hacktivism, where people feel, perfectly entitled and ideologically motivated to conduct cybercrime because they want to save the planet.